When you're building a product and you've got women as a target audience, it seems obvious in terms of the value proposition you need to provide for them. And I'm sure you can maybe talk about the research you did to sort of identify this is a problem not just that you're facing, but a problem that a significant proportion of women face. And sort of once you address that, then it becomes a question of, okay, the decision maker, in some ways, the distributor or the gatekeeper might not be a female that understands the problem. In some ways, a gatekeeper literally means, I control the door here and I control what goes inside this building, or, in this park or this neighborhood. Consequently, that means it could be a man who may not appreciate that the women in this property or this building have this problem. So sort of walk us through, how did you validate the problem set beyond yourselves? What advice do you have for other people trying to do the same?
So I haven't come across a single woman in my life before or during starting SOS that hasn't faced this issue on the go. I think it is a prolific issue that every single woman faces, and as you leave the United States, it becomes even worse. I think access to feminine care is a global issue, or the lack thereof. And so, beyond that personal experience, we did conduct a survey when we first founded the company that was coast to coast across over 100 of our friends and family and peers, across industries and experience sets, to see what people's experiences were. And no surprise, the data was overwhelmingly validating of, that personal experience set that we had each had. But, I do think the complexity of our business is obvious, as is the problem we're solving. So fortunately for us, the problem didn't need a lot of validation, but we have our work cut out for us to make sure that this network, thrives and becomes the network that we're envisioning.
And I think the truth is that if men were faced with the same issue, that this would have been basically disrupted a long time ago, right? So if men needed to leave the building, ask a friend for products that are going to be used in the bathroom potentially every day or multiple times, and the buildings and the companies and the corporations weren't providing those products, I think, or you were forced to pay with quarters, or the machines were empty all the time, there would probably have been quite a bit of negative feedback, and the space would have been disrupted. So again, to Rubina's point, it's a problem that women face and have faced, and typically the folks who are responsible for collecting feedback in commercial properties are typically men. So most women in these spaces haven't wanted to go to the head of facilities necessarily to say, hey, I'm literally on my period right now, I need a tampon. This is, a messed up situation. And so we are the voice for all the women who didn't want to have that conversation, and we're happy to be doing it, and hopefully we'll, change the world because of it.
There's a great book by Alan Cooper called The Inmates Are Running the Asylum. Across business schools, MBA programs, it is a case study on, think about it, inmates running the asylum. If you task, prisoners with running the prison and designing it, it's going to be built a certain way. And in the same way here, if the decision makers are men, they're going to be having a bias. They're going to build products that they can resonate with. And the magnitude of the problem doesn't sink in. For a woman, for example, as you said, who needs a tampon in a rush and there's no choice, that is an urgent, life-critical problem, and a discrete problem too, not one you're going to be advertising. And if you solve that pain point, you generally improve the lives of people, the occupants in that building. That's not an intuitive insight at all. And a lot of technology today seems intuitive to us. Right, the ability to do things on your smartphone with one tap, and to get navigation, etc. But it took a lot of research and changing the current landscape, and the industry you're in, which is smart retail and using vending machines as a way to do that, is ripe for disruption. Now, going back to the gatekeepers here, do you find more success when there is a woman executive in charge of the decision, or do you find it works no matter what, as long as you create a logical pitch? And is there logic involved, or is there emotion involved, or both when you're trying to push your product?
So I have different experiences here, but I don't think that it really matters if it's a man or a woman. I think with a woman, they're going to intuitively understand the problem. So you kind of move past that part of the conversation a lot. more quickly. But I think with SOS, as I mentioned before, from the very first moment, we expanded the product set to include more than just the feminine care products. And some of the products that we sell, as I mentioned, we saw last year, are actually being purchased by men. And so there's this amenity that was designed and built by women for women. But what's really interesting as we think about our expansion over the next 3 to 5 years, there's the need and interest on the part of men to actually participate and use the SOS network as well. And so where we originally had thought these machines would exist within a women's restroom, we've actually evolved our thinking to locate the machines approximate to the restroom, so that if a man wanted to buy a deodorant wipe or a chapstick, that amenity is there for them as well. And that is, as you can imagine, made conversations with real estate owners even simpler, because now this is an amenity that's actually serving their entire population.
Do you find, and is the advice here for any founders or executive trying to sell a product targeting women, do you need a different pitch if it's a man or a woman? Or is the pitch really the same? What's been your experience?
I think that we typically get to a point in conversation pretty quickly where we have to say the word tampon and period. And even the founding story, I had my period. And so cutting to the chase, like we get right to the point, there is a little bit more grace and space, I would say, built in for some men in the room who may, need a minute to be comfortable talking about the topic. And we're fine giving that space and time, as long as we can ultimately end up with the right outcome, which is getting, our product in the market and getting access to these amenities improved for women in space. So I would say it is a different conversation. We've learned a lot along the way. I think our backgrounds in finance and coming from careers that were built in male-dominated environments, facing off with decision makers who were primarily male, positioned Rubina and I very well to be the women having this conversation, because we have basically been in this space and dealing with a very male-dominated community for our whole careers. So as a founding team, I think it's been very beneficial to us to have, a lot of comfort and level of confidence being in rooms with decision makers who are, men, since it's our typical.
I think we're at a tipping point in technology adoption and innovation where the market is starting to appreciate the needs of humans, and particularly women. You're seeing now new legislation pass where you need to have mother rooms, just as you used to have prayer rooms before, right? Now you need mother rooms to breastfeed your baby. And in most airports now, that's fairly visible. Legislation is moving in that direction. Going back to the problem you're solving, and just for sort of the benefit of some of our listeners here, it's not just about improving the comfort of your target audience. Sometimes when you run a company, the problem you're solving is so foundational that there's somewhat of a social mission. And those businesses are the ones that have the potential to transform. So to get to the point here, here's an interesting stat. According to the Water Aid Organization, this is shocking, okay? The lack of water, basic sanitation and hygiene leads to deaths of almost, now the number I'm about to say is I'm going to repeat it, it's 800,000. 800,000 women globally a year are attributed to dying because of the lack of water and hygiene. So if you think about this problem on a global scale, it's scary. And here in your current market, the US, it's really a test bed. And I guess what makes it easy too is the market size is tremendous. The feminine hygiene market is supposed to hit a $27.8 billion market value by 2027. And there are opportunities, I feel today, that entrepreneurs and executives can leap onto if they target and go into this segment. People have a bias, especially if they're men, or even some women can have a bias, because they're in a real male-dominated environment, right? And what's your advice, given that there's this wave of innovation and disruption happening? How should someone, take that step like you did? And you both were very successful in the corporate realm, and you left the comfort of, some of the most prestigious firms in the world to go out there and create a company in a new category.
Yeah, I think the simple answer is because we were really just floored by how ridiculous the current state of affairs is for women. So that hasn't changed. We still feel that way, and we're solving that every day. To answer your question about that, besides the market and the other innovators, one of the things we acknowledged right away when we started SOS was the incredible evolution of quality in feminine care products. So there are a lot of really amazing companies that have built products and designed products that are more sustainable, that have ingredients that are clean. There's a huge wave within the beauty world right now for more clean brands to exist and for more transparency to exist for consumers so they actually know what's going into their bodies. We work with an incredible brand, Cora, who has a clean or all organic feminine care product line right now within the SOS network. I think one of the things we realized had not been solved was getting those products into people's hands when they were outside the house. And so this idea of this distribution model, right, and transport of goods from kind of point A to point B and making sure that they are at point B when you need them is really where SOS inserts itself. So there is a lot of logistics to our business, right? We need to make sure that these machines are stocked at all times, that you're not faced with the same issues as a consumer that you face with the current model, which is, machines are often out of stock. The coin-operated mechanism to pay has obviously been resolved with the more digital forms of payment we accept, but making sure that products are there where you need them, when you need them, is really the heart of SOS, and I think ultimately will make or break our company.
And we're also really betting on, with a lot of conviction, that solving a problem for the most valuable consumer on planet Earth, which is women, is a good bet to make, right? So this is a problem that is pervasive, that is felt and experienced by women worldwide, and we are also spending all the money. So ultimately, the consumer marketplace is very eager to reach and access this consumer, and we're solving a major fundamental, problem for her, which is this access. So I think we feel, very excited about the mission and also about the value of what we can build.
Absolutely. This was really wonderful insights. It was an absolute pleasure to have you both on the show today. How can our listeners reach you? And is there any ask you have? We have a whole very diverse audience. We have executives at large companies listen to this, a lot of people in real estate, both on the facilities management side, but also on the investment side. And then, we've got other founders who find definitely inspiration in this. Anything you're looking for from our audience, and how can they reach you?
Yeah, so I will throw out, we have a single email that is easy enough for people to use if they want to reach out and talk more about SOS or placing SOS machines in your space or investing in SOS for the investors that are listening and watching. So that email is founders@worldofsos.com. And for those of you that are just interested in watching our journey, we have a fledgling but growing Instagram account. The handle's @world_of_SOS. So I would encourage you to follow us there and just track our progress. And to the listeners that live in Boston, we are live obviously in the city of Boston. We'll be expanding outside of Boston very soon. But if you haven't already, our machines are spread across town, and I would encourage you to go onto our website and go visit one and let us know what you think.
And just for good measure, I'll add one more ask, which is if you are interested in learning about how to get the SOS network in your city, in your building, in your space, we are growing our network and are looking for great partners to work with who understand the mission of the company and are interested in working with us. So please reach out. We want to have this network coast to coast, and would love to do so with you.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Zain.
Thank you.